I thought I was gonna have a chill day today, but Bandai had other plans. Out of nowhere, Shisui has been released in Shinobi Striker and Kendo just came out for My Hero 1 Justice 2. First up, it's Shisui. We'll talk about Kendo and the My Hero patch later. Shisui is an attack type character, and right now you can unlock the character and play with him, but you can only use his jutsu if you buy the character next week, which I think is a really cool change of pace for Bandai. You've got more time now to play the character for free, to make up your mind if you want to buy him or not next week when he really becomes available. He's got some very unique jutsu. I gotta say, I'm a big fan, and honestly I can't wait to try out some loadouts when he becomes fully available. But for now, let's take our first look at all of his jutsu, figure out all of its unique properties and counters, but not without first giving it up for today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by Kaioken Clothing, the online store where you can get t-shirts, hoodies, or masks inspired by your favorite anime shows. If you're into Naruto, personally, I really like the Yondaime hoodie, or even better, the remixed Yondaime hoodie. In fact, their entire remix section might just be my favorite. Their alternate takes on character designs make them look a lot more unique and a lot cooler in many cases. In fact, all the designs you find in the store are made by Kaioken Clothing and are exclusive to the store itself, so you don't have to worry about wearing something everyone else is gonna have. You get to pick something cool and unique. When you're ready to buy something, use promo code Globku at checkout. You'll get 10% off with free shipping on top of that. Thank you Kaioken Clothing for sponsoring this video. First of all, Shisui's got a new substitution jutsu, which might just be the best substitution jutsu in the entire game. It's called Swift Step, and it works similar to the default sub or high speed movement, in which it doesn't leave a clone behind that explodes or anything. And it's got a very short cooldown too. But what makes it better than those other low cooldown substitutions is the fact that it actually buffs your character. Whenever you use your substitution, you gain a movement speed buff. And maybe you get even more than that, but the description for the substitution isn't available yet. Still, just with the movement buff alone and that extremely low cooldown, this immediately becomes my favorite substitution in the entire game. But let's talk jutsu. First up, the Uchiha style Halo Dance. You charge at the enemy and perform a combo with your flaming dagger. Shisui will attack 3 times while teleporting behind the enemy, and the first strike will actually disable enemy substitution jutsu, which makes the next 2 guaranteed hits. In fact, after the jutsu is over, you can even get a couple of hits before the substitution comes back. It's a very beginner-friendly jutsu to use. It has a decent travel distance, and it's guaranteed damage if you connect with the first attack. The last attack is also a projectile, so even if your opponent ends up a bit further away from you, there's still a good chance you'll hit them. While this jutsu is fairly straightforward, I think this will be a lot of people's favorite, especially if you can combo it with other substitution disabling jutsu or guard break jutsu when the character fully releases. And I honestly can't wait to see the combinations that you guys will come up with. Next up, perhaps the trickiest jutsu in Shisui's kit, Uchihashiri kenjutsu Oboroguruma. Let's take this one slowly since it's quite complex. It's a 2-step jutsu. First, you hit a button and Shisui throws his shuriken on the ground. Then you press it again and he summons that shuriken to his position while hitting any enemies in its path. So let's take a look at the first step for now, placing down the shuriken. When you throw it on the ground, your character is immediately buffed, gaining movement speed and attack tracking. This happens regardless of you hitting your opponent with it or not. But if you do connect this placement with an opponent, they'll be stunned in place. Similar to when you hit them with a smoke bomb, they've got that same stunned animation and everything. Hitting your opponent will also disable their jutsu for about 7 seconds. Then you have step 2, which is summoning the shuriken back to you. If you hit your opponent while summoning back the shuriken, you will also disable their jutsu for about 7 seconds, and they'll be stunned for a very short amount of time. The interesting bit about the second step is that there's no animation, so you could do it mid-combo or even while getting hit, which means this is a great ability for interrupting opponents' combos on you. I mean, if they're right in your face and you summon the shuriken, there's a very good chance that the shuriken will hit them and disable their jutsu at the same time. I believe this will end up being this jutsu's main use. Now, there's another line in the jutsu description that had me confused for a bit, but I think I finally figured it out. Resets your substitution stock. Well, as you might have noticed, I've been hitting people with this and my substitution isn't really coming back, so what's happening? I think this may be a translation error, because in fact, it doesn't reset your substitution, but it does make the cooldown go slightly faster. Every time you see me hitting with this jutsu, be it when placing the shuriken down or when summoning it back, my substitution cooldown decreases just a little bit. You do need to hit with a jutsu, just throwing it out there doesn't contribute to your sub cooldown. So overall, I think there's there's a lot that's sort of misleading with this jutsu. First, the description makes you think that it's gonna reset the substitution, but in reality, it just shortens the cooldown a little bit. And second, it's a shuriken, which makes you think it's gonna be a ranged ability, but I think it mostly shines as a close combat jutsu. And here's why. First of all, he places the jutsu directly below him, which means the best way to hit with this is to try and combo with it. And in order to summon it back and hit an opponent, you're either gonna get really lucky from far away, or you're gonna summon it back when your opponent is right next to you, whether he's comboing you or you're comboing them. This is probably the most interesting jutsu from Shisui's collection, but it feels like a fairly technical jutsu, not immediately obvious what it's good for, but I like it, and I'll keep practicing a few applications with it, especially when we can make our own loadouts. And finally, we have the start of the show, Shisui's ultimate, Kotoamatsukami. This is another two-step jutsu, meaning you press it once and it gives you one effect, and then you press it again and it gives you the second effect. The first effect is immediately crazy. It places all of your allies in a Sharingan state. You know, like the original Kakashi Sharingan. No one can hit you or your teammates. They'll substitute automatically after getting hit by kunai, melee attacks, or enemy jutsu. And on top of that, it's not single use only. It lasts for a whole 15 seconds. So during 15 seconds, your entire team cannot get hit because they substitute out of everything. There is a minor weakness to this, which is the effect has a small cooldown. So if you attack right after the jutsu activated, you're gonna hit your opponent a couple of times. But then the cooldown will just end and they'll vanish again. For a full 15 seconds, your entire team is very hard to kill. And then when you hit the button again, you activate the second stage of this jutsu, the Kotoamatsukami Zanko, which according to the jutsu description, confuses enemies. Well, that's not very useful. Let's break down what happens exactly. First, your opponent's screen will look like this. Very low visibility, you can only see your enemies when they're really close to you. And second, their controls will be inverted, like Nervous Rapture. And this lasts for another 15 seconds after you activate the second stage. So if you wanted to stretch this jutsu as much as possible, you would activate it once, giving your whole team Sharingan for 15 seconds, and then at the end of the 15 seconds, you'd press it again to invert the enemy team controls and limit their vision. You do have to press the button a second time though, otherwise the jutsu will just expire and you will not get the most out of your ultimate. I recommend using the in-game clock to keep track of time. The second phase does not extend your teammate's Sharingan effects, so you can only have those for the 15 seconds after you activate the first phase. Which means that if you want Sharingan and disabling the enemy team simultaneously, you double tap that ultimate and you'll get both effects at the same time for 15 seconds. It's not an ultimate that closes a fight like many attack types are used to. In fact, it doesn't even deal any damage, but it's a tremendous setup ultimate, especially in objective battle types. It's gonna be an absolute nightmare dealing with this ultimate on the enemy team. Imagine trying to catch a flag carrier when your opponent substitutes automatically during 15 seconds. Imagine protecting Gamakchi when the enemy team cannot get hit. Its applications are insane and no jutsu can dispel its effects. The best you can do is run jutsu that deny that ultimate charge. But even then, this ultimate doesn't charge slowly at all. It's really good. And that's our first look at Shisui. Gonna be honest, never saw this character coming, especially since Shinobi Striker hasn't really brought many hype characters, not to me personally. They usually miss the mark even if they make their movesets interesting. Shisui is definitely a fan favorite and I think they did right by him in this game too. The next characters are between Shino Kiba and Sasori. Sergio M3 has data mined animations for all these three characters, but there's only two left, so I wonder which one won't make the cut. And then that should be it for season 3. Those are probably the last characters and we'll be here to check them out. But before we do that, you can count on a video next week checking out some of the loadouts for Shisui's jutsu, which I'll probably be streaming on Twitch as soon as the character becomes available. Link down below. I may even take one of your loadouts and feature it in the video if you show up. Don't forget today's sponsor, Kaioken Clothing. Get 10% off with code Globku, link also down below. And what are your first thoughts on Shisui? Have you tried him out yet? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you very much for watching. My name's Globku and I'll see you next time. Bye.